What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the New York Giants kicked off mandatory minicamp yesterday with a few alumni in attendance. Bill Parcells stopped by, so did Michael Strahan, so did Brandon Jacobs. All the stars came out to check out what was going on with the New York Giants as they kick off mandatory minicamp. Of course, got these 2 days of minicamp, then a long break, and then training camp kicks off at the end of July. So the Giants players, coaches, they're going to get a nice rest before hitting the ground running for the upcoming 2023 season. And this upcoming season, one player leads the team with the biggest cap hit, and that is Leonard Williams. $32 million against the cap this upcoming season. Now, before the offseason even began, we discussed on this channel, the Giants probably need to do something with that number, whether it be extending him, restructuring the contract, whatever the case might be. We believe that the Giants needed to lower that cap hit, and so did pretty much everybody else. We're not alone in this. But the Giants, to this point, have not touched that contract at all. They haven't done anything to it, so he is standing still with that $32 million cap hit going into this regular season. And according to reports from Dan Duggan of The Athletic, the Giants don't have any interest in touching that cap hit, and they're fine letting it sit and letting Leonard Williams play out the final year of his contract. So we're going to go ahead today and discuss what that means for the Giants, what we think that they should do with the Leonard Williams contract, and what the pros and cons are to not touching that contract and letting him play out this final year of his deal. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on the Leonard Williams contract situation?
I'm doing great, man. Look, Leonard Williams, and this is kind of the situation with him. Dexter Lawrence loves the guy. There's a lot of people who love Leonard Williams in the building. But as you mentioned, the cap hit is simply too much. It's one of the biggest in the league, and ultimately the Giants have to make a tough decision. And I think he's playing in the 2023 season. The alternative is they cut him and save $12 million. But, what are you going to do with $12 million that supplements the loss of Leonard Williams? Pretty much nothing. There's nobody on the market for $12 million that's going to replicate the type of value you get from Leonard Williams. So in all, you have to keep him this year, and I think that's the right move. That's the right decision. Having him with Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Azeez Ojulari, you're not going to find many better four-man fronts than that. I think that they have elite potential, given the health history of a lot of those guys. Kayvon Thibodeau, he played most games last year, knock on wood. He was relatively healthy. Dexter Lawrence played pretty much more than anyone expected last season, and Leonard Williams throughout his entire career has been very, very, very reliable and durable. So I don't anticipate another weird kind of injury-riddled season for him like last year. So I think he bounces back. 3 of those guys have good health histories, and then of course you have Azeez Ojulari, who I'm not ready to label injury-prone yet, but he did only play in about 8 games last year. One of them was not really that much, and then of course you add on the postseason games where she was definitely not 100%, probably more like 50%. So if this team can, this unit can stay healthy, they have elite potential in my opinion. But beyond the 2023 season, what are you going to do with Leonard Williams? Are you going to supplement his loss? What do you kind of have? What are your options, right? I think that the Giants have a couple options. One, they extend him after the year, which is going to be pricey. Like Leonard Williams, he's going to be 30 years old next year, probably looking to cash in one more time. Somebody's going to look at him and say, he's one of the best, interior defenders in the league. He stops the run at a very high clip. He's durable. He's reliable historically, and he's a tremendous pass rusher. Someone's going to give him a nice little payday. The Giants, however, you have Dexter Lawrence. They just paid. They're going to roll over that contract that they saved from Leo, and they're going to roll it into Andrew Thomas's extension. So that's where the money's going to come from. You're basically flipping Leonard Williams into Andrew Thomas's long-term deal. That's kind of how I view it. At the same time, how do you replace a guy with that much value? Because you can't just lose Leonard Williams and do nothing to replace him. So there's 2 options here, right? Actually, I'd say there's 3 options. One, you go out and you trade for somebody that is of underrated value and that you hope you can coach up. And, you have Andre Patterson, who's one of the best interior line coaches in the game. You see what he did for Dexter Lawrence last year was next level stuff. He said, when it comes to Dexter and Leo, he hasn't seen many combinations like that in the league in his entire career. So it's very unique. It's very special. They almost know what they're thinking. They have telekinesis, telepathic kind of chemistry. And they just know what they're going to do. They just look at each other and they know. Dexter Lawrence kind of alluded to that in a couple of quotes yesterday. So you can't replace that level of chemistry. You can't replace that level of quality. The best you can do is try to find a player that you can develop alongside Dexter Lawrence who has really good upside. That leads me to my second option. You look to the NFL draft to help supplement the loss of Leonard Williams. So first round pick is probably going to be the selection you're looking at. A lot of teams go with those interior big pass rushers. You see a couple of those guys, what's his name? The guy from Georgia that went to the Eagles, of course, very, very annoying. They always end up going to the Eagles for some reason. But the Giants get, a guy like that maybe. And then obviously you try to develop him into a player that is of equal value to Leonard Williams, which is tough to do, but not impossible. Or you look to the second round to get a guy that's a really good run stuffer that has a little bit more potential as a pass rusher, similar to Dexter Lawrence. We've had really good success over the years finding guys in the second rounds, mid rounds, that can stop the run and then develop their game. Of course, like Dalvin Tomlinson was a tremendous run stuffer for us. Linval Joseph, you see so many guys in the past the Giants have let go. More run stuffers than pass rushers, of course. But maybe you go in the first round and try to find a guy that has that upside. And then the third option would be going into the mid rounds and not going in the first round. So, Anthony, if you're looking at replacing Leonard Williams next year, you can't really replace him because he's so experienced and seasoned and kind of knows the game so well. And he's very durable. But what would be your favored kind of alternative here to try and supplement some of the value you lose because you kind of have to save the money?
Well, when I look at defensive linemen, I think that the hit rate on them in the NFL draft is pretty high. I think that you can find good defensive linemen who will compete for starting jobs and contribute in those starting roles throughout the NFL draft, whether that be in the first round if you're going after an elite prospect, or in rounds 2, 3, and probably down to rounds 4 and 5. I think the New York Giants could probably find themselves a starter on the defensive line in any of those first 5 rounds next offseason. So when I'm looking at replacing Leonard Williams down the road, I am looking to the NFL draft. I think it's smart for the Giants to invest in that position through the draft. However, I will say I don't know if investing a first or second round pick is necessarily the best idea, just because those are really premium picks, and defensive line not considered the most premium position. If you're looking at positional value, how much the position makes on the open market, they don't make a whole lot compared to some of these other positions like wide receiver, like quarterback, of course, and cornerback. So when the Giants are going to invest their draft capital into this position, I think third round is kind of that sweet spot for finding probably a starting level defensive tackle while also investing a good enough draft pick where you can feel comfortable making him a starting level player. So that's kind of the strategy that I would take. But this upcoming season, I personally have changed my mind on the Leonard Williams contract. I don't think that the New York Giants need to do anything to it. I think that they are doing the right thing by letting him play out this final year of his deal. So if you cut him, if you extend him, if you restructure him, what are you saving? Okay, a few $1 million, but what are you doing with that money? At this point in the offseason, what can you possibly do with it? Sure, you can add a couple of veteran backups to your roster, but is that really worth restructuring this Leonard Williams contract, adding more dead money to the future years and financially restraining yourself for the next several seasons? No, it's not worth it. So I think the Giants are doing the right thing here, and this is a strategy by Joe Schoen, I believe, to put themselves in position where if they want to just tear everything down in the future, they absolutely can, because they won't have a bunch of dead cap money and a bunch of finances restrained in the future. And it's the same thing that they're doing with Adoree Jackson. By not extending either one of these players this offseason, they're giving the players the opportunity to go ahead, prove that they belong here for the long term this season. They can go ahead and extend them off next offseason, 2024. And I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. I do think Leonard Williams is going to get that extension next offseason. I don't think the Giants necessarily have to go out there and look for his replacement, but he'll probably get a long-term deal or a short-term deal next year on a much reduced salary. I'd say a 2-year deal, probably half the price of what he was making now, because he's going to be an older, almost 30-year-old veteran next offseason, and that's going to make a lot of sense for me. Again, you want to keep that chemistry between Williams and Lawrence, and you also want Leonard Williams to probably retire a Giant, because he's been a leader and a captain here for a couple of seasons. So we all like Leonard Williams. He's going to be back, and I think that next year he gets that extension. But right now, it just doesn't make sense for the Giants to financially restrain themselves. What if Leonard Williams gets injured this season? God forbid. If he gets injured and the Giants have signed him to this extension this offseason, then they're not going to be so happy and so confident in the extension that they just signed. So just let him play out the deal. There's not much that they can do with this money at this point unless they go ahead and they try and make a run for DeAndre Hopkins, but they reportedly don't have any interest in doing that, or if they wanted to get really, really jazzy with it and go after Stephon Diggs. But again, the Buffalo Bills, it's nearly impossible for them to trade that contract. So the Giants are pretty much done here. The roster that they have right now is the roster that they're going into the 2023 season with, and I'm content with that. I think it's a solid roster, and I do think that, again, next offseason, we can talk about extending some of these veteran players. So, Alex, when you're looking at it from that perspective, not financially restraining yourself for the future, I think that Joe Schoen is doing the exact right thing here by not touching these contracts of Adoree Jackson, Leonard Williams. But do you think that these players have the opportunity to earn these long-term contracts next year? Or do you think that the other contracts that the Giants have to hand out, Andrew Thomas, Xavier McKinney, will that ultimately prevent them from re-signing some of these more veteran players like a Leonard Williams or Adoree Jackson?
I mean, when you look at their salary cap next year and the kind of things they have to do, I think the value, ultimately, the NFL is going in an offense-first league, right? Like, we've already gotten our guys like Deontay Banks, and you have Jalen Hyatt, some receivers here. Maybe we bring back Saquon. Seems like things are heating up on that end, obviously. Don't really want to touch on that, on the Saquon thing, until we have a little bit more information, because it seems like same old, same old. They're just talking, and nothing's happening. But, when it comes to the Giants' salary cap space in the future, we do have a pretty healthy situation, right? We have like $60 million next year, and then you have to, that includes Leonard Williams and Adoree Jackson's contracts expiring. So you lose two really big pieces, right? You lose two insanely valuable pieces on your defense, but you have $60 million, right? So what do you do here? You still have your draft selections. Let's assume that they go out and they find in the first round a really solid pass rusher, run stopper, interior guy that really plugs the gap that Leonard Williams leaves behind. And, we have good coaching, good pieces around him, a lot of them still on rookie deals. I feel like we can supplement the loss of Leonard Williams. Like, that's probably one of the easier ones compared to cornerback, which is like, a lot of times those big interior guys can plug in and be decent, at least average right away. But cornerbacks, those rookies sometimes, man, get absolutely toasted in their first years. Very rarely do you see a Sauce Gardner situation like blossom, right? That's very rare. So I would probably say the Giants don't want a rookie and a sophomore player as their primary outside cornerbacks next year. They probably want to go out and get a veteran. I think that they probably leave it up for grabs in terms of that's where they're going to allocate their free agent money, is probably a cornerback to pair with Deontay Banks. I don't know what they have against Adoree Jackson. I don't know why they wouldn't extend him. He's a good player. He's in his prime. He knows our scheme. Maybe they are estimating that someone's going to be on the open market or somebody's going to become available. They just want to test the market. It's for what it's worth. They could 100% bring back Adoree Jackson, but I think they just want to wait until free agency to see what else is available. Maybe there's a better fit that Wink Martindale likes, someone with a little bit better ball skills. We've known Adoree to drop a couple interceptions in the past. Maybe they want someone a little bit more aggressive, a little bit better against the run. He's been solid against the run, but over the course of his career, he has been a liability at times. Has had some injuries, of course. So maybe they want to just test the market, see who's out there, which I think is a fine strategy for what it's worth. I do not think they're going to draft another cornerback to be a rookie-sophomore tandem. That's kind of a risk, in my opinion. I like veteran sophomore and Deontay Banks and someone else. They can be like CB1A, CB1B type of situation. But you have you have Andrew Thomas's big deal coming up. Obviously, that's going to take up a significant amount of salary space. But he is making a nice chunk of change this year. I forget exactly what the number is. It's like $14 million or something. He actually has a $10.2 million cap hit this upcoming season. So not the worst thing in the world. And then in 2024, they picked up his fifth-year option. So that whatever contract he signs doesn't actually come into effect until 2025 anyway. So it's not that big of a deal if they want to go and bring in some other guys, or maybe extend Leonard Williams on a one-year deal. He's going to be 30 years old, so he's not going to be getting $20 million per season. Maybe he gets 16. Could we live with that? There's a lot of things that could happen ultimately. It's hard to kind of sit here and say, but it seems like the Giants are keeping their options open, mainly because they may want to go out and trade for a disgruntled WR1. You see Stephon Diggs is holding out from the Buffalo Bills right now. Maybe they go out and say, you know what, let's go bring in Diggs. That's our missing piece. That's our missing link. And Daniel Jones is going to get a lot better because of it. Our offensive line's developing and looking pretty good. I feel like right now they're waiting to see what side of the ball needs the most assistance, right? Because you go out and get JMS, you have Jalen Hyatt, seemingly like Saquon's coming back. DJ gets signed, he has his big deal in play. Like right now, I feel like the Giants have a lot of talent, a lot of young developmental players like climbing the ranks, and a lot of good veteran presences around the roster. Now it's just a matter of like, okay, what's going to be our weakest spots? Like where do we need to allocate funds and allocate resources? Right now, you're still in a rebuild phase. Like I know we just signed Daniel Jones to a big deal, but I don't think that we should be viewing year 2 as like go all in and win a Super Bowl just yet. This is a process. I do feel as though we are still in the middle of a like cultural and roster rebuild. Like there's a lot of contracts still killing us from Dave Gettleman's era. We're still paying Kenny Galladay. Like Sterling Shepard signed a veteran minimum deal, but we're still paying him from the deal he signed with Dave Gettleman, like the void year that he had. We're still paying Kadarius Toney and guaranteed money. You know what I mean? Like we're still paying a lot of guys and mistakes we made in the past. So with that being said, they're still trying to get some dead weight off and clear some stuff and figure out the roster. I still feel like we can win. Like this is the best you're going to get, like winning while rebuilding. But the only reason I still view this as a rebuild is because I think this is long-term success. Like we're going to be very good for a long time and not very good for a 2-year window like the Rams might be. And then we're going to suck for like 5 years, right? I think they're building for a long-term successful run. And it feels like that is in the cards for us. It's just a matter of being careful, not overspending, kind of letting the market come to us and making decisions with more knowledge. The more knowledge we have, the better we're going to be. If you make premature decisions, you invest prematurely, it's going to bite you in the butt. Maybe you're like, damn it, like I wish we didn't invest in Leonard right now or Adoree right now because, Jalen Ramsey just hit the market and like, he's had a down year and we think he's going to bounce back. Like anything could happen. So I think just more information, more knowledge offers you more alternatives and more, avenues to go. And ultimately, I think that's kind of the equation the Giants are following.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with that more. And I think that the main thing that I really like about what you said and about what the Giants are doing here is that by not touching these contracts, by keeping themselves financially restrained this season, they open things up down the road to where if they think they can find that one last piece just to get that over the hump, right? Get to the Super Bowl, make themselves a contender. They'll have the money to do that because they're not tying up more dead money and tying up any future money to other players that are already on the roster. So I think that's really the key here. Again, you look at what the Bills did when they traded for Stephon Diggs. They did that during a time where, they found a disgruntled player, they brought him over. I get it, he's disgruntled now again with the Bills, but they brought him over and it propelled them to become perennial playoff contenders. They did it again a few years later by trading for Von Miller. So now the Bills right here in their Super Bowl window have a really good chance year in and year out, and the New York Giants are trying to build a similar formula, but they won't be able to do that if they continue to tie up dead cap money to players like Leonard Williams or Adoree Jackson. So that's our take on it. And I think that you just got to trust the process here. Joe Schoen knows what he's doing. We all believe in him. We all believe in Brian Daboll. And make sure to comment how much you believe in the both of them down below in the comment section. Of course, comment your thoughts on this topic down below, discussing Leonard Williams and all of the other contracts that the New York Giants have refused to adjust this offseason. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. But without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
TVSO.